Welcome to part 3 of Goals over Backlogs, Objective-Driven Agile. In this episode, I'm going to look at 6 heuristics, 6 rules of thumb, if you like, for setting good goals. And these are really about how you approach the goal setting process. Motivation. This one is the simplest heuristic of all. It's the one I'm going to say least of, but it might be the most difficult to practice. Simply, don't set objectives that you're not motivated to meet. You want to have objectives that you and your team are keen and enthusiastic and want to meet. So when you're writing objectives, always try and inject a little bit of enthusiasm in there. Try and think of ways of enrolling people, both in the process of setting them and in what they say. Because frankly, if you're not motivated to meet one of your goals, it's going to be a death march and it's going to be unenjoyable, and you're probably going to miss it. One way of getting people motivated about meeting objectives is heuristic number 2. Involve many people. Specifically, involve your team members. Involve the people who are going to be delivering this. There are several reasons you want to do this. The most basic of all is fairness. If you are asking your team members to sign up to and to pursue a goal, particularly a difficult goal, then it's only fair that they have a voice in deciding what that goal is and deciding the wording around it and the parameters around it. So involve your whole team. Linus Torvalds, the inventor of Linux, says, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. And that's what we're getting at here. We want to involve the whole team so we get the whole team's brain power. The whole team can bring their information and the whole team can share that information. So bring the whole team together, use all their brains, use all the information to set good goals. Now, I know some people get worried at this point that if we have more people in the meeting, our meeting will get longer and we don't really want to spend a long time setting our goals. We want to get on and do stuff. Well, they're correct. There is a little bit of evidence that having more people in a meeting, having more people in a discussion means it takes longer. However, the interesting bit is having more people involved in setting the goals may mean that you move to action sooner. There's a great book written a few years ago called The Living Company by a Dutchman called Arie de Geus. And in that book, he talks about how Shell discovered, or he discovered at Shell, that when more people were involved in a planning and strategy meeting, those meetings turned into action far more quickly. And if you think about it, there's a logic there. For starters, you don't have to communicate to the people who weren't in the meeting what the meeting decided, because everyone was in the meeting. And you don't need to take questions from the people who weren't in the meeting because they got to ask the questions in the meeting. And going back to heuristic number 1 about motivation, if people are in the meeting and they are part of the goal, part of the strategy that's been set, it's natural to assume they're more enthusiastic about it as all these things come together. So don't be scared to involve the whole team here. Setting your goals should be hard. It should be hard to set goals. It should require a lot of conversation and discussion. As Elon Musk says, the first order of business is to try, and you must try until your brain hurts. We don't want to set easy goals. We want to set goals that we've thought about, goals which are a real challenge. The easy stuff we don't need to set goals about, we just do it. We want to give a lot of thought to the goals we're setting and the key results we're going to put around them. We want to bring all the brain power. We want to involve everybody. So we want to take time on this, and this is going to make for a hard meeting. It should be a hard meeting. If it's too easy, there's probably something wrong. So when you're setting your goals and key results, think hard. Build shared objectives around the whole team. Add numbers to your key results. And that can be the hardest bit, how you're going to measure these things, what numbers you're going to put on there. And remember, what we're aiming for here is test first management. We are, as a team, deciding the outcome we want to bring about. Don't rush your meetings, allow time. Accept, though, that perfection may be out of reach, at least for today. So the mnemonic here is GETMO. good enough to move on. You want to spend some time on this. You want to work hard at it. But at the end of the day, I guarantee you, in 3 months or 6 months, when you look back on the goals you've set, you can see how they will be better. So don't strive for perfection. Work hard, but don't be scared to say, okay, that's good enough. We'll move on. Heuristic number 4. Consider OKR setting as a 2-step process. In the first step, you decide your outcomes and you decide the acceptance criteria. And you're going to come up with 3 or maybe 4 goals as OKRs. Now, please notice this is step 1. This is setting the outcomes. This is setting the acceptance criteria. These are the goals you're striving for. But notice that goal setting is not execution planning. You are not working out how you're going to build a solution. You're not going to even work out what the solution could be. You're not going to design a solution, and you're not going to break the work down. Goal setting is not work breakdown. Step 1 is about the outcome you want to bring about. Step 2, after you have set those outcomes, after you've set those OKRs, then it is time to think about how you're going to deliver that. You can plan the work, you can design the solution, you can break down work to tasks. The reason we want to separate these 2 steps is because we want step 1, the outcomes we're targeting, we want them to be focused on the wider goals, the strategy, what the customers want. We do not want to be thinking about how we're going to build it. We want to focus on our outcomes and how our outcomes are valuable and outcomes our customers want. We don't want to contaminate that thinking with thinking about how we're going to build this. So separate how you're going to do it into a second step. Goal setting is a 2-step process. Set the outcomes and then later think about how you're going to meet it. Heuristic number 5 is less about what you actually do when you're setting the goal, but more the way you look at the goals and you look at the process. And this is about recognizing that you can't be perfect and nothing in life is perfect. And just because something is handed down to you from above, whether it is a goal, a strategy, a mission, there is potential for improvement. There is feedback. There is feedback both ways, both from other people, from stakeholders, from more senior leaders into your team, and from your team to all those stakeholders and senior people. So try and see the OKR process as the process of debugging strategy. When we set OKRs, we are testing the strategy we have been given. So it starts off with somebody, maybe a peer or maybe a senior leader, asking, can you help? They've set their goals, their OKRs perhaps, and they've asked you and your team for some help. And you reply and you say, sure we can, and you incorporate their requests into your own goals. But in the process of doing that, you'll have some questions. The people doing the asking, people making the request, shouldn't expect to just give you a piece of paper with the request written on it and you to jump and you to respond. No, there's a conversation to be had here. There's learning to do on both sides. It's possible that you and your team are interpreting the request differently. Perhaps the people making the request haven't been clear, or perhaps people making the request don't realize the implications of what they're asking. Perhaps you have some extra information which, when added to that request, changes what you think needs doing. So the people who are making requests, they're in receiving mode. They've asked for help. They should be listening and thinking about what they need to do. It's the process of each team setting its own goals, its own OKRs, and how they relate to other teams. And this is not a hierarchical relationship of one team inflicting requests on other teams. It's a cooperative, conversational mechanism whereby feedback allows us to debug the goals and the strategy of the organization as a whole. Hopefully, you're starting to realize that this is also saying that we don't have some kind of centralized planning which is working out the goals and what to do for everybody. There's emergence happening here. Strategy, goals, actions, all of it is ultimately emerging in some sense. And most importantly, what we have emerging is alignment. People often talk about OKRs as a tool for creating alignment, And a lot of people have the mental model that alignment comes because one team, perhaps a central planning team, decrees what others should do. And the other teams, by following the instructions, following the planning of a central team, will be aligned because they are following a central plan. And this happens again and again in organizations. When we start to grow bigger, when we start to scale up, people go back to planning and the idea that somebody, usually some central team or some master planners, can bring about plans which will cause alignment to happen. But this is not the case. We need to see alignment as an emergent process. It's a process of one team saying, this is what we want to do, and other teams responding, and feedback happening, and the initial team changing its ask, and all the other teams gradually moving into alignment over weeks and even months. Teams should be setting their own goals, and they're setting their own goals in reference to the wider goals of the organization and the other teams they work with. It's by allowing teams freedom to set their own goals that we can see where there's mismatches and information missing. It's the iteration and feedback process that allows us to feed back upwards, downwards, sideways, everywhere. And that feedback allows us to find those anomalies. It's not perfect. In an ideal world, perhaps there would be a centralized planning team that could produce perfect plans. But you know what? In an ideal world, everyone could create sensible plans that all aligned. This process of feedback allows us to build in corrections. It allows us to see better alternatives. Emergence is all around us, and emergence is hiding in the Agile Manifesto. The best architectures, requirements, and designs are emerge from self-organizing teams. Emergence exists in our society, in our systems. However, we tend to regard emergence as a property which is less desirable. We tend to favour planning. As I say, when we start to scale up our organisations, we tend to forget about emergence and go back to planned outcomes. But in truth, there's a lot to be said for emergence. The latest generation of AI systems all result from emergent behaviour through the neural networks. I'm old enough to remember when we thought AI systems were going to be rule-based systems and we could knowledge engineer rules from experts, code them up into AI systems and control what came out of the AI systems. That approach has not been as successful as the neural network systems, even when neural networks have emergent behaviors which are less than desirable. We can go back and correct them. So emergence exists in AI. In fact, emergence exists on a far larger scale. Emergence is all around us in the market economy. Prices emerge from the invisible hand, as Adam Smith said. When we go to buy apples and oranges in the fruit market, the sellers in the fruit market set the price not from some master plan, not from a centralized price list, but by reference to how much did the fruit cost them to buy? What are other sellers selling? How loyal do they think their customers are? Is their fruit of better quality, perhaps? The market economy is an emergent process. It has some duplication, it has some inefficiencies, but on the whole, the market economy, with its emergent behaviors, has outcompeted the other alternative systems that have been tried over the years. And the market economy is not even the biggest example of all of this. Market economy is often seen going hand in hand with democracy. And in democracy, we see the same kind of emergent behaviours. And again, sometimes democracy gives us leaders who we'd rather not have. But over time, we see how public opinion emerges, and public opinion is codified by politicians. Not perfectly again, but as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others that have been tried. So emergence is legitimate. Emergence is all around us. We need to build it in to our goal setting process and the way we operate our organizations. Finally, when it comes to measuring success, particularly measuring success in the context of goals and OKRs, I want you to ask, what benefit have you created? Are your customers happier? What did you learn? What assumptions do you realize you are making that you're no longer making? And how can you do better next time? Ultimately, I'm not particularly concerned about whether you meet the goal or not. That's almost secondary. What I'm concerned about is, have you created benefit? What have you learned? How are you going to do better next time? The goal was something we aimed for and something we tried to bring about. We may have met it, we may have missed it, but ultimately what we want is something bigger than the goal. It's about benefit. It's about learning. It's about expanding our capacity and making our customers happier. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please drop me an email, alan@alankelly.net. Please connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm just simply Alan Kelly Net on LinkedIn. And please buy the book, Succeeding with OKRs and Agile, now in its second edition, available at Amazon and many other good booksellers. Last but not least, and since we're on YouTube, please press the subscribe button and like this video so you can hear more updates from me and more people can get to hear about the video. Thank you. Goodbye.